Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It is Monday, the 23rd of June, and we've got hot weather that has finally entrenched itself in the eastern U.S. It's going to be around for a while, the first real heat wave of the summer here so far in 2025. Also, it's not raining in a lot of places, but where it is going to rain over the next several days are areas that probably need it the most. Let's dive right in. Here is the surface map today, and we've got a long, cool front that stretches from Lake Superior all the way down to the Panhandle region of Oklahoma. It's actually fairly cool behind this front for this time of year, and I'll illustrate that here in a second. Meanwhile, this is a big old high-pressure system that's sitting over the U.S. Let's take a closer look at some of these things, and you can tell it's high pressure because the winds, and that's what these lines are that are sticking out of these surface observations, and they always point in the direction that the wind is blowing, but there's not much wind. That's very characteristic of being under high pressure. All these winds are pretty weak. If they were strong, like here in Springfield where I live, that's a 15-knot wind, so about 17 miles per hour. But a lot of these winds, Nashville, Atlanta, just kind of weak, and it does make hot weather a little less tolerable. It is breezy here in Springfield, not as hot as some of these other areas, but Washington right now is at 96 degrees, and over in Raleigh, it's 98 degrees. Let's switch over to another surface plot. This is West Texas and New Mexico, and the reason I show this to you is because, the bottom number on this is the dew point, 66 here in Amarillo, Midlands at 63. And these are okay dew points for this time of year, but a lot of times in the spring, a dry line's sitting here, and the air on this side is substantially drier, like dew points like this one, like 34, or even single-digit dew points have come in before in the springtime. But I want you to notice that these higher dew points in the 60s are kind of nosing their way into parts of New Mexico, and that's an important factor that I'll explain here in just a couple of minutes. Let's switch gears and talk about the whole U.S. now. The main game is this frontal system that stretches from Ontario and Quebec all the way down through Wisconsin and all the way down to Mexico. And so that's a stream of moisture. It's very clearly defined. Probably the biggest severe weather threat on this map is not in the United States. It's up here right now where some of these thunderstorms are quite active. What's causing all this? Well, here's the 500 millibar flow laid on top of this. Remember I talked about a high pressure at the surface? Well, aloft at the jet stream level, there's high pressure, and so these are stacked on top of each other, so that always spells hot weather underneath one of these things. Meanwhile, the main jet stream flow is coming along like this. It's always assumed that the winds are to a really good approximation flowing along these red channels, these lines here. Got a trough of low pressure out in California, and cool air is dipping in behind. You see the jet stream separates warm from cold, and so this is interesting, this part of Montana, because I'm going to show you 36-hour snow totals. I know I had to kind of put the snow folder away for a while when I do this weather to watch, but I brought it back. So these are, of course, higher elevation snows, but we're seeing 3, 4, 6 inches of snow, even a 10-inch snow report in northwest portions of Montana. Well, here's a radar loop and some of the more active thunderstorms, a linear thunderstorm producing probably straight-line winds going north of Madison there in Wisconsin, other scattered storms from Des Moines back to the Omaha area, and even off along I-70 to the west of Topeka. The model for tonight is analyzing this storm to be running from just north of Milwaukee to around Dubuque, south of Des Moines, ending up, probably just north of St. Joe. And is there going to be some severe weather in this? Yes, most likely. In fact, the forecast for the rest of tonight. So these are, when these forecasts are issued for the day, they're meant to expire at 7 a.m. But I think most of this is going to occur in the next 6 hours or so. I'm recording this about 5 o'clock Central. So much of Wisconsin, a good chunk of northern Michigan, the UP, all the way back to northern Kansas has a slight risk, a 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. It's mostly going to be wind, maybe a little large hail. Is there a tornado risk? Yes, 2%. But the overall synoptic pattern is not favorable for tornadoes. It's a front with no low pressure center really attached to it. And you need that spinning of the winds in the low levels to really get tornadoes going. So it's possible that some of these Boeing segments could do it, interactions with other thunderstorms. So it's possible on a severe weather scale, almost all severe thunderstorm risks have at least a small risk of a tornado, and it's not real big today. Severe thunderstorm watch extends right along that area where the slight risk was forecast for today. If you want a more extensive look at severe thunderstorm thunderstorm outlooks. Every morning I produce a video that covers today and the next 7 days and even looks ahead to supercell development well into July. So tune that in the morning if you're curious about severe thunderstorms in your area. Switch gears here and talk about heavy rain. So this doesn't come up too often, but there's a moderate risk, 40% chance of a very heavy rain hazard in central New Mexico, right around the Albuquerque area and up to Santa Fe. So remember I was talking about those dew points? So they're actually being pushed in on southeasterly winds and actually making this area of New Mexico a lot more moist than it normally would be. And that, coupled with that train you saw at the jet stream level, you saw those clouds just kind of streaming through here. That's going to rack up some pretty good rains. In fact, for the period June 25th through the 29th, heavy rain potential exists right in the heart of New Mexico and also much of Nebraska, Iowa, all the way up to Minneapolis and a good chunk of Wisconsin as well. The National Weather Service forecast for rain, WCP actually, Weather Prediction Center, does show 4+ inches of rain around Rochester, Minnesota. This is for the next 5 days, with the red indicating 2. The scale's right down here. And that covers a good chunk of Wisconsin, almost all of Iowa, and all the way down into parts of Kansas and also to Missouri. And we switched same product, different location. You can see 4-inch total showing up here in south central portions of New Mexico with the 2-inch band covering a lot of ground out there, even parts of northeast Colorado getting in some pretty good soakers. There is a flood watch in effect for that very same area. Nothing has been pulled yet for the areas up to the north and to the northeast in Minnesota, Iowa yet, but I'm sure that will be forthcoming. And the reason I think this is kind of interesting is because this is the latest drought index here, and it shows this area right here is one of the drier spots in the country. And you remember the stream of moisture was doing this, and then it was curving back like this, and this is a risk area, and much of Nebraska is a fairly good drought area, and if that holds up, it'll be very good news for them. Well, on cue, the advisories for heat all over the place. A heat advisory is the lowest, I guess you could say, of all the types of heat advisories and warnings that you can have. But look at the extent of the country. And the reason the Ozarks aren't included in this, by the way, is we have a slight elevation. Keeps us slightly cooler than our neighbors usually. Also, another curiosity is you'll notice that extreme heat warnings are clustered around larger cities like St. Louis and Chicago and Milwaukee, the urban effect of that. Or sometimes Weather Service offices will just say, yeah, I just think it's hot enough to do it without there being an urban area like right there in Indiana and much of the East Coast. Now, this extends for today and also tomorrow. It's not just about the temperatures, though. It is also about the heat index, the feel-like temperature when you combine humidity with that. And we're getting some readings up around above 110 degrees there in Maryland, and also in eastern Pennsylvania. And I think I saw a few more down here, in North Carolina, a couple of readings above, well, at least above 101, not quite up to that level. But yeah, still a pretty dangerous situation. Here's an example of what the high temperature map looks like for Tuesday with 100-degree readings stretching all the way from southern New Hampshire and Vermont all the way down the East Coast and straight down almost into Georgia, not quite. A little cool there, 99 degrees. We'll take a look at a graph here. This happens to be Richmond, Virginia, but it would apply to almost all those cities in those areas. And you can see they're going to be at or above 100 degrees for the most part for about the next 7 days. Well, after saying nothing's going on for a while, there is actually a little bit of tropical activity forecast, about a 40 to 60% chance of some sort of tropical disturbance forming over the next 7 days. That's way out in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific. So if you're wondering, this is Bermuda right here, that little dot. So this is not going to harm anyone. But it is kind of an indication that things are trying to go. Now, the ocean temperatures are warmer up here. They're actually slightly below normal in this region here. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of activity here for a while. A lot of Saharan dust is blowing out over the Atlantic, and so the ocean temperatures haven't really responded yet. But of course, it's very early in the tropical Atlantic season. Not so much so in the tropical Pacific, though. We're already to F on the next storm, which if it forms would be Flossie, and it would probably form right in this region here. And, those often don't cause a lot of problems, although the last one, Eric, was a Category 5 or a major hurricane, not a Category 5, but it slammed into Mexico, so it's not always a guarantee. Then the last thing we'll look at is the July temperature forecast is out. It's showing much of the Intermountain West with the highest probability of above normal temperatures, along with much of the northeast and north central U.S. A little bit of break from the heat that we're currently experiencing here. A big chunk of central and eastern parts of the country forecast to be about normal. And then on the precipitation side for July, wet out east in many areas, high confidence of that. Not the highest, though. So all these colors are just confidence level. So the darker the green, the higher confidence it would be of an above normal forecast. And then the orange color, same. The darker, a higher confidence of below normal reading. So it looks like much of Montana is forecast to be dry in the month of July. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.